There was a season in my marriage when I could tell you everything Jake had done and everything I had done, and somehow my list always seemed longer. I knew how many times I had cooked, how many things I had handled, how many times I had made the phone call, remembered the appointment, paid attention to the details, or taken care of something without being asked. And if I felt like Jake wasn't doing as much, I noticed that too. I didn't call it keeping score. At the time, I probably would have told you I was just being realistic. But looking back, that's exactly what I was doing. I had an invisible scoreboard in my head. Donna did this. Jake didn't do that. Donna remembered this. Jake forgot that. Donna sacrificed here. Jake could have done more there. And the problem with keeping score in marriage is that you can always find a way to make yourself look like the one carrying more. Because you know everything you do, but you don't always see everything your spouse is carrying. That was something I had to learn. When you've been married a long time, responsibilities can become so familiar that you stop noticing them. You notice what isn't getting done before you notice what is. You notice what your spouse forgot before you notice what they remembered. And over time, that can create resentment because every little thing starts getting added to the total. One day, you aren't just frustrated because the trash didn't get taken out. You're frustrated about the trash, plus the thing from last Tuesday, plus the conversation from 3 weeks ago, plus 5 other things you never really let go of. That's not one disagreement anymore. That is a whole account. And I had accounts. I had receipts. I had history. And sometimes Jake probably thought we were talking about one thing while I was talking about 20. I had to learn that if I said I forgave something, I couldn't keep pulling it back out every time I got angry. That's not forgiveness. That's storage. And marriage can become very heavy when you keep storing every disappointment. Now, I'm not saying we should ignore patterns. If something keeps happening, it may need to be addressed. If there is disrespect, neglect, betrayal, abuse, or something serious happening, that is different. I'm talking about ordinary marriage. Two imperfect people living together long enough to disappoint each other sometimes. Because that is going to happen. Jake has disappointed me. I have disappointed Jake. That's what happens when two human beings share a life. The question is, what do we do with those disappointments? Do we address them, learn from them, and let them go? Or do we keep adding them to the scoreboard? I had to face that question because keeping score was not bringing me closer to Jake. It was slowly making me see him as an opponent. And your husband should not feel like the person you are trying to beat. Marriage isn't Donna versus Jake. It is supposed to be Donna and Jake facing life together. That shift in thinking changed something in me. One reason scorekeeping is so easy is because we naturally notice our own sacrifices. I know when I'm tired. I know when I did something even though I didn't feel like doing it. I know when I changed my plans. I know when I gave something up. But I don't always know the full weight of what Jake was carrying inside. And the same was true for him. That taught me to be careful about deciding who was doing more based only on what I could see. Because marriage is not always 50-50 in every season. There are times when one person carries more. There are times when the other person does. There have been seasons when I needed Jake more, and there have been seasons when Jake needed me more, especially as life changed. Illness changes things. Age changes things. Caregiving changes things. Energy changes. Responsibilities change. A marriage cannot survive well if every season has to balance perfectly every single day. Sometimes love says, I've got more strength today, so I'll carry more. And another season may require the opposite. That doesn't mean one spouse should take advantage of the other. It means marriage is a partnership, not a time clock. That was hard for me to learn because I like fairness, and fairness sounds good. But marriage taught me that fairness and sameness are not always the same thing. Sometimes fair means both people giving what they honestly have to give in that season. And sometimes one person's 100% looks very different from the other person's 100%. I had to stop comparing effort only by what I could measure. Another thing I learned was to say what I needed before resentment built. That was a big one because sometimes I would do too much, say nothing, do too much again, say nothing, and then finally explode. And by then, Jake was confused because he didn't even know there had been a problem. I had been silently collecting points. That wasn't fair to either one of us. If I needed help, I needed to say I needed help. If I was overwhelmed, I needed to communicate that. If something felt unbalanced, we needed to talk about it before I had already decided what Jake's intentions were. Because silence can make your imagination very creative. You start telling yourself, he sees me struggling and doesn't care. But did I tell him I was struggling? You think he should know. Maybe. But sometimes he didn't. Sometimes people truly do miss things. And I learned not to make every missed signal into proof that I wasn't loved. That saved me a lot of unnecessary pain. I also learned to notice what Jake did well. That sounds simple, but appreciation changes what you see. If all you look for is what your spouse is not doing, you can build a convincing case against almost anybody. But if you start paying attention to what they are doing, the picture gets fuller. I started noticing his consistency, his faithfulness, the ways he showed up, the things he handled that I had stopped noticing because they had become normal. And I realized something. Normal love can become invisible if you aren't careful. The person who shows up every day doesn't always get noticed because they keep showing up. But that consistency matters. I didn't want to lose sight of that because I was too busy keeping track of imperfections. So I started putting the scoreboard away, not ignoring real issues, not pretending everything was equal all the time, just refusing to turn our marriage into a competition. And peace started growing where competition had been. Today, I think about marriage very differently. I don't wake up wondering whether Jake did enough yesterday, and I don't want him measuring me that way either. Because love gets exhausting when you constantly have to prove you deserve credit. There should be room in marriage for grace, room for an off day, room for weakness, room for somebody to be tired, room for someone to forget something without it becoming evidence in a larger case against them. That doesn't mean responsibility disappears. It means we stop treating every mistake like a character flaw. There is a difference. One thing I ask myself now is, am I addressing what happened today, or am I bringing old resentment into today's problem? That question has helped me because sometimes the intensity of your reaction has very little to do with what just happened. You're reacting to the whole history. And if that's the case, the real issue may need a bigger conversation. But if you are going to deal with something from the past, deal with it honestly. Don't disguise it as an argument about something small. That's how people end up arguing about dishes when the real issue is feeling unappreciated, or arguing about a forgotten errand when the real issue is feeling alone. I learned to look underneath the argument. What am I really hurt about? What am I really needing? And what does Jake actually need from me? Those questions moved us farther than scorekeeping ever did, because the goal stopped being who did more and became how do we take care of what's happening between us? That's a completely different conversation. And I want to say this too. There may be somebody watching who truly is carrying too much in their marriage. I am not telling you to pretend you are not. If you are overwhelmed, say it. If you need change, talk about it. If there is a serious imbalance, address it. Grace does not mean becoming invisible, but scorekeeping usually does not solve the imbalance either. Communication might, boundaries might, asking for specific help might, changing a pattern might, but keeping a running total in your head usually just makes you angrier. I know because I did it. And the biggest problem was there was no way for Jake to win. Even when he did something right, I could remember something he had done wrong. That's not a healthy place to live. Eventually, I had to decide. If we had talked about something, worked through it, and forgiven it, I had to stop using it as ammunition, because forgiveness cannot create peace if you keep reopening the file. That lesson changed the atmosphere of our marriage. Today, I don't think of Jake as somebody standing on the opposite side of the scoreboard. He is the man beside me, the man I have spent decades building a life with, the man I have laughed with, argued with, prayed with, grown with, and walked through some very difficult seasons with. And when I look at our marriage that way, I don't want to spend whatever time we have together counting points. I want to spend it appreciating the life we built. So, if you have an invisible scoreboard running in your marriage, maybe today is the day to look at it. Are you keeping track of every sacrifice, every mistake, every disappointment? Every time you think you did more, if something needs to change, have that conversation. But don't let your marriage become a competition, because the person across from you is not supposed to be your opponent. They're supposed to be your partner. And after 34 years of marriage, I've learned that sometimes peace begins when somebody finally puts the scoreboard away. I'm Donna, and this is Still Standing with Donna. And remember, this is a season, not a sentence.